So, what are viruses and how do they mutate and make you sick? There is a close connection between microbes and humans. About half of the all the human DNA originated from viruses that infected and embedded their nucleic acids in our ancestors' egg and sperm cells. Microbes occupy all of our body surfaces, including the skin, gut, mucous membranes, etc. In fact, our bodies contain at least 10 times more bacterial cells than human ones. Microbes synthesize vitamins, break down food into absorbable nutrients, and stimulate our immune systems. And though some microbes make us sick and even kill us, in the long run, they have a shared interest in our survival. For these tiny invaders, a dead host is a dead end. The success of microorganisms is due to their remarkable ability to adapt. Human beings produce a new generation every 20 years or so. Bacteria do it every 20 to 30 minutes, and viruses even faster. Because they reproduce so quickly, microorganisms can assemble in enormous numbers with great variety in their communities. If their environment suddenly changes, the community's genetic variations make it more likely that some will survive. Viruses are tiny, ranging in size from about 20 to 400 nanometers in diameter. Billions can fit on the head of a pin. Viruses are simply packets of nucleic acid, either DNA or RNA, surrounded by a protein shell. Outside a living cell, a virus is a dormant particle, lacking the raw materials for reproduction. Only when it enters a host cell does it go into action, hijacking the cell's metabolic machinery to produce copies of itself. Viruses make us sick by killing cells or disrupting cell function. Our bodies often respond with fever, which is heat, which inactivates a lot of viruses, and the secretion of a chemical called interferon, which blocks viruses from reproducing, or by activating the immune system's antibodies and other cells to target the virus. Antigens are little proteins on the outer surface of cells or viruses, and when they are detected by the white blood cells, they trigger an immune response. An example of this is various types of allergies like animal or nut proteins could be antigenic and trigger an immune response. So how do we actually fight infection? After the white blood cells detect an antigen, they produce antibodies, which are special proteins that lock on to specific antigens. Antibodies lock on to the antigen, but they do not kill it, only mark it for the later death. The killing is done by other types of white blood cells called lymphocytes. They literally eat up a virus and break it up into smaller pieces. These antibodies remain in the blood a long time after the microbe is eliminated, and that is how we develop immunity. Now, how do viruses mutate? Viruses can modify their genes by exchanging genetic information among each other. They can mutate in two ways: antigenic drift and antigenic shift. Now, before I go into this topic of mutation, I want to show you what a virus looks like. So you can see on the screen, this is a typical virus, and this is a typical bacteria, gut bacteria to be more precise. Now I want to show you a video of a white blood cell attacking a bacteria. So as you can see on the screen, let me just enlarge this. this white blood cell is chasing the bacteria. It is still chasing, and it has engulfed it. There you go. And now it will be broken down by the white blood cell into smaller pieces. I think this process of engulfing is called phagocytosis, but I need to be double checked on this. Now back to the topic of how does a virus mutate. This is the structure of a common virus. As you can see, the proteins on this surface, the cone shaped and the mushroom shaped proteins, are the antigens. These proteins are which trigger an immune response by the white blood cells. So these antigens, these proteins on the surface, are detected by the white blood cells, and then they produce antibodies which lock on to which lock on to the antigens. Are nothing but proteins which lock on to the specific antigens, and then they mark them for their killing, and then the T cells, T lymphocytes, later kill those viruses which are marked. Now, the topic of mutation. How does the virus mutate? Viruses can modify their genes by exchanging genetic information among each other. So they can mutate in two major ways called antigenic drift and antigenic shift. Antigenic drift is when there are small changes in the genes of viruses which can lead to changes in their surface proteins of those viruses. These small changes, because these are small changes, it is called a drift, and these small changes can lead to changes in the surface proteins which are mostly HA and Na. Now, as you can see on the screen, the HA or hemagglutinin and Na, the neuraminidase are the surface proteins. This mushroom shaped protein is called neuraminidase, and the cone shaped is called hemagglutinin, as you can see here. Also in this picture it should be more clear. These surface proteins are called antigens, short term for antibody generators. Antigenic shift is an abrupt or major change in the surface proteins of a virus. One way shift can happen is when an influenza virus from an animal population gains the ability to infect humans, which is what is now happening with coronavirus. So the infecting virus is so different and its antigens are so different that they cause a major genetic change which causes the antigens to change drastically, and that is why our white blood cells cannot detect these antigens, because they have changed in a major way. So these were the topics I wanted to cover in this video. If you have any comments, please give them down below, and I will see you in the next video.